It had been a long, strange journey, but Joseph was finally at peace. He had been sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused, and then put in jail. Then he helped other people, but they forgot him, and then, at long last, he interpreted Pharaoh's dream and had been elevated to the second highest position in all of Egypt. His official title, found in many Egyptian records, was, quote, Chief Steward of the King, unquote. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Scrypt Bible Stories for Adults. I'm Louis Marsh, Senior Pastor of River Church, and your host for this show. And let's not waste any time. Let's just jump right back in to this amazing story. Now, Joseph had worked hard for 7 years to prepare the nation for the famine that was coming, the famine that Pharaoh's dream had predicted. It hadn't always been easy either. At first, he faced much opposition, I would imagine. Not blatantly, of course. Some had lied about how much food they had to hold back, some for themselves. Others thought this young upstart, this foreigner, could be bribed or fooled, but he had driven through all such opposition, much like his chariot drove through the crowds, with his servants out front making the way for him. The grain had been saved, safely stored, and guarded. Everything was organized and ready for when the famine finally arrived. Thanks to God's kindness to Joseph and Pharaoh's wisdom in choosing and trusting him, Egypt was far more than ready. In fact, the nation was so wealthy and so ready that they actually had extra foodstuffs to sell to foreigners who came to Egypt for help as the drought began. For the famine hit the entire area, not just Egypt. Joseph himself oversaw this crucial operation. It was important that they didn't sell too much. Otherwise, Egypt themselves could be in danger. And that what they did sell, well, it needed to be sold for the right price. It had value. And Pharaoh trusted Joseph alone to do this. So he devoted his time to selling the excess grain in a palace he chose for that purpose. Of course, Joseph wasn't Egyptian, but he looked like one. All the hair had been shaved from his body, richly dressed in the best clothes, face painted after the Egyptian fashion, and of course, wearing his wig and false beard. Speaking flawless Egyptian, he was to all outward appearances the model of Egyptian nobility. Now, the famine had been bad, not just in Egypt, but in his former home of Canaan. When Jacob's family was just about out of food, he told his sons to get off their collective backsides and go to Egypt and buy some grain that they needed. He sent all his sons except Benjamin, who was Joseph's full brother, the only other child their mother ever had, and since Joseph's seeming death, Jacob's new favorite child. The brothers made the trip, and having arrived at the palace, must have waited for a while, but finally they were ushered into the presence of the governor of Egypt, who sat waiting for them. They must have been impressed with his regal bearing. But that was all. None of them recognized him for who he really was. After all, as far as they were concerned, Joseph had died years ago as a slave. Their brother was not dead, though, and was watching them very carefully. At first, he couldn't be certain as they walked towards him, but then, as they drew near, then he was sure. His brothers. These men were his brothers. He drew in his breath in shock, as silently, according to Egyptian custom, they bowed before him, with their faces actually touching the floor. In that moment, Joseph knew, though his brothers did not, that the dream God had given him all those years ago when he was just a boy, that dream was now being fulfilled. Joseph now faced a real conundrum. Should he reveal who he was to his brothers? What if they feared him and refused to come back? Did they still hold a grudge against him? What kind of men were they anyway? Their history with him certainly didn't speak well of them. He loved and missed his family, especially his father, but could he trust them? All these thoughts and more must have flown through Joseph's mind in the blink of an eye. He decided to play for time and find a way to test their intentions and their character while learning more about them and his long-lost family. Joseph spoke harshly, as if he was an arrogant Egyptian who looked down upon these hairy barbarians. He demanded to know where they were from, and they told him they were from Canaan. "You're spies," he said. "You are seeking to find weak points in our defenses." "No, my lord," they answered, dismayed and puzzled at why this Egyptian was so antagonistic to them. "We've only come to buy food, and we are honest men." "I don't believe you," Joseph said. "You've come to see where our land is unprotected." They told him they were 12 brothers who were the son of one man. "Our youngest brother is at home with our father, and one brother is no more." Then Joseph had an idea and said, "It's just as I said, you're spies. This is how I'll test you. As Pharaoh lives, you're not going to leave this place until your younger brother comes here. Send one of you to get your brother, while the rest of you stay here in jail. We'll see if you're telling the truth or not. As Pharaoh lives, I still think you're spies." Then he threw them in jail for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph spoke to them. "Do this and you'll live. I'm a God-fearing man. If you're as honest as you say you are, one of your brothers will stay here in jail, while the rest of you take the food back to your hungry families. But you must bring your youngest brother back to me to confirm the truth of your speech, and not one of you will die." They agreed. Then they started talking amongst themselves. "Now we're paying for what we did to our brother. We see how terrified he was when he was begging us for mercy, but we wouldn't listen to him. And now we're the ones in trouble." Reuben broke in. "Didn't I tell you, don't hurt the boy? But no, you wouldn't listen, and now we're paying for his murder." Joseph had been using an interpreter, so they didn't know that he understood every single word they said. Joseph was so moved by what they were saying that he turned away from them and broke down, crying. When he could speak again, he took Simeon and had him tied up, making a prisoner of him while they all watched. Then Joseph ordered that their sacks be filled with grain and that their money be put back in each sack, and that they be given rations for the road. They loaded their food supplies on their donkeys and set off. When they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get food for the donkey, and there at the mouth of his bag was his money. He called out to his brothers, "My money has been returned. It's right here in the bag." They were puzzled and frightened. How would their father react to this? And what on earth could they do to keep the Egyptians from considering them as thieves? "What's God doing to us?" they asked. Now that's a great question, especially for anyone going through tough and puzzling times. And if you want to know what God was up to here in the lives of these men, well, come back and join me next week when we'll let everything out of the bag and you'll see what's going on in this incredible up and down story of Joseph. Until then, take care and stay tuned for Footnotes. Welcome to Footnotes. I just wanted to make a brief comment here on applying this story of Joseph to your life. Now, here on Tales from the Scrypt, I'm not preaching and I'm not teaching. You can tell that because these are much shorter than my sermons and my lessons, much to the dismay of my congregation perhaps. But nevertheless, we just want to tell the story and give you the background information and kind of fill everything in. Application, I might mention it a little bit here and there, but we don't really do much. But last Sunday at the time of this recording, I preached on forgiveness, and whenever you preach on forgiveness and really get deep into it, it affects a lot of people because a lot of us have a lot of guilt and anger and resentment and things that we carry with us over past events. So we talked about it. And here in Genesis, we see Joseph now facing his brothers for the first time. And the question is, has he forgiven them because of these games that he starts to play with them? And my answer is yes. My answer is that Joseph was a very wise man, and he understood the difference, and this is what so many of us miss, between forgiving and trusting again. There's a difference. He forgave them. He loved them. You know, he broke down when he saw them, and he cried privately. Why? Because he wasn't ready yet to completely trust them. After all, the last time he saw them, they sold him into slavery, which they assumed, and you can tell by the way they talked to him, they figured he died as a hardworking slave years ago. They had no idea what God was going to do. And you can see the depth of his forgiveness in that Joseph will look at this from a very different perspective than you might think. And we'll talk about that next week. So, yes, Joseph had forgiven them. He wanted to be in relationship with them. He wanted to see his father again so much, but he was a wise man, and he knew that he had to make sure that he could trust them. Forgiveness is letting go of the pain and the hurt and the anger and the resentment and what other kinds of negative feelings or whatever that you have. Trust, that's a whole different thing. And the smart, wise person will give a little bit of trust and see what happens, and a little more, and be very careful in reestablishing that. And Joseph is that wise man. So Joseph, if you're struggling with forgiveness and trust again and all those kind of things, Joseph is a great role model. And I hope you'll consider that for your own life if these are things that you're struggling with. And we'll be back next week with more. And I'll remember to wear my glasses next time, too. Till then, this is Louis saying thanks for watching. God bless all of you, and see you later.